And welcome back to Cajun Coding. This is St. Raz, and this episode we're going to be finishing up the Warmup1 section of the Codingbat website. We've done some repetition with a lot of our exercises here. That's a good thing. It'll help you learn these things. These are the very basics, so this should be second nature by the time you move on to more sophisticated topics. And here is string E. Return true if the given string contains between 1 and 3 E characters. So we're going to count these characters. Now we need between 1 and 3. So if we have, for example, 4 E characters, it's not between 1 and 3. So we're not allowed to return true as soon as we encounter 1 E, because we could go beyond the parameter there. So we're going to have to keep track, and we can do that with a simple integer, data type int, and we could call it just count, and we're going to initialize it at 0. Before we've started counting, we don't have any in that count there. So, and let me see, I'm not sure whether they intend for us to use for loops yet, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce them. I'm not sure what their solution is, but we can solve this with a for loop. And a for loop consists of two main parts. One is the declaration of the for loop here, in which we have an integer, and usually the convention is to use the I, and that keeps track of where we are in our iterations of the loop. Now the loop has to end somewhere. It's not going to go on forever. And we're going to check each spot in our string here. So it's going to be less than the string length. Don't forget those parentheses. And then we have the incrementer I++. I don't think we've gone over this before. The ++ after a variable name is an incrementer. That tells us we're going to increase the value of that variable exactly by 1. Okay, and so that's we initialize our increment variable. We set a limit on how many times the loop is going to run, and then we have the incrementor, which is going to increase, in this case, increase by 1 the incrementer variable I for each iteration of the loop. Each time the loop runs, the code in between our opening and closing brace here is going to run. And in this case, we're going to check the value of these characters here. So we've got our string, and we can use the char at. Now notice inside the char at we used I, and that's one of the things that you're going to be doing a lot in programming, is rather than use, this needs an integer for the index address of that string, where we run the method char at. We don't actually have to put a number there. We can put a variable that holds a number. So each time we run this loop, the for loop, this I is going to be set at a variable, but that's going to increase by 1 each time the loop iterates. So we're going to be checking for that E. Okay, now actually I did this wrong. We actually need to check if this is true. Then what we're going to do is increment the count variable, and we increment it with the ++ convention, the same one we use in the loop there. Now when we've done that, gone through that for loop and made those checks and incremented or not incremented the count variable as we assess the value of each of the characters through various points in various indices in the string. Now we're going to return true if it's between 1 and 3. So return count greater than or equal to 1 and count less than or equal to 3. And there we are. You'll notice because we start at 0, if they pass us an empty string, 0 is less than the string length, and then the loop ends. The loop ends pretty much immediately. So an empty string in this case passed in is not a problem. So we don't end up with a out of bounds. Okay, and warm up the last digit. And I forgot to start my timer again. Let's go ahead and do that. I think we've been running about 5 minutes, so I'll keep an eye on that. I think we're just going to. I think we'll comfortably be able to finish this one, and we'll just end at the end of the warm-up section. That's a nice spot to stop. So I can definitely do these 3. Last digit. Given 2 non-negative integer values, return true if they have the same last digit, such as with 27 and 57. Note that the mod, short for modulus or modulo operator, also called the remainder operator, computes remainders. So 17 modulo 10 is 7. And it might have been better if they hadn't given us that hint that makes it pretty blatant what we need to do. It says return true. So we're going to do a comparison. So we can just use return A modulo 10 would give us the last digit. It'd be equal to B modulo 10 if they do have the same last digit, and of course if this statement resolves to false, then it would return false. And that's it. End up. Given a string, return a new string where the last 3 characters are now in uppercase. If the string has less than 3 characters, uppercase whatever is there, note that string.toUpperCase returns the uppercase version of a string. So, what if we have a string of 3 or fewer characters? So if string length is less than 4, so it's 3 or less, return, and we're going to do the string, and we're going to call the method toUpperCase. In any other case, this string is 4 or more characters. What are we going to do? We're going to have to turn. The first part of the string is not going to be uppercase. So we've got string substring. And we're going to start at 0, and we're going to go where? Where are we going to end it? Now remember that these parameters can be computations. So what we can do is string.length. String.length is going to bring us to the end of the string, but we can perform operations on that. So string.length minus, is it 3 or 4? Remember it's 0 index, so let's say we have a string of 4 characters. The last index would be 3, not 4. So if we're going to the last index, it would be length minus 1. So if we're going to 3 before that, it would be string length minus 4. And I think I did that wrong. Oh, no, I didn't. We've got that. Actually, it's -3. But that's not the problem. The problem is that I forgot to put the rest of the string. So we do a concatenation, and then we do string substring. Now for the last part, we start at string.length -3. We start there. If we only put one value inside the parameter there, that's the index it starts at, and then it prints out the rest of the string. But let's not forget, we're also going to call the method toUpperCase. Calling that method, we need parentheses. They're going to be empty. And there it is. First two characters, the last three there are capitalized. Last three there in the word there, capitalized. Short string, 3 or less, if 3 or fewer characters, is going to be uppercase. Like so. Every nth. Oh, I didn't check our solutions. The one before that used a for loop, didn't it? Okay, yes, they are introducing for loops. I was trying to figure out how to do that without a for loop. I didn't know if they intended for us to use those yet in the exercises, but I'm not sure how else you would do that. Every nth, and see, this is the last exercise in our warm-up section, so we'll go ahead and finish after this one. Given a non-empty string and an int in, return the string made starting with character 0 and then every nth character of the string. So if n is 3, use character 0, 3, 6, and so on. N is 1 or more, so we know we're going to be dealing with a value for n. That is at least 1. Sure looks like it might need a for loop on this one. And let's go ahead and set up our answer. It is a string answer, and we'll go ahead and initialize that to empty string and get that for loop set up. This particular for loop is going to become very familiar to you. You'll be typing it in your sleep. Int I equals 0, and then this parameter, the middle one, varies a bit. In this case, let's do string length. Oops, it would be I less than string length. I less than string length. And then these are separated by semicolons, and then I++, which is going to become very familiar. No semicolon right here, just between the 3 sections. And then our code block here. Now, we're starting with I equals 0, so we're going to go ahead and answer is going to be assigned, or rather appended, plus equals. And then string character at. And then actually, when we're doing something like this, we don't need the, actually we wouldn't need the single quotes anyway for character at. We're just going to use the I there, and that's going to add the character at that location on there. And then we return answer. Now, by now you should know to anticipate that there could be an out of bounds exception. And actually I made a small mistake here. I is going to be plus equals, and we're going to use n here, and this is going to increment it by n, whatever n may be. It may be 2, 3, 1. That's going to vary. Now when we get here, anticipating a possible out of bounds exception, we need to check something real fast. And I'm going to introduce a new keyword for you. If I is greater than string length, then it should be greater than or equal to, because if it's exactly equal to, it's still going to have us out of bounds. We're going to execute this code in this block. So let's say we have 4. So we're at index 4, and n is 3, and our string is only, say, 5 characters long. Then an extra 3 characters puts us at index 7, and when we attempt to evaluate index 7, when there is no index 7, we get the out of bounds. So as we come through the loop, if I is greater than or equal to string length, we're going to break. That's it, just break. And that keyword break, if that's executed, it's going to break us out of this for loop, and it will send us to this line of code. And everything works. So let me see. Our n is 2. So we start at index 0, m, and then we move I is 0. Second round through, second iteration, 0 plus equals 2. So we're adding 2. So now when we check, we do the check here. It's not greater than length. So we add the index 2, the character at index 2, which is R. And then we go through again, get C. Now look at this one. The n is 100. Okay, so we do C, we start I at 0, just as it says, the first character. And then the second iteration through, it adds 100. Chocolates is kind of a long word, but it's certainly not 100 characters long. When we assess this, it's obviously way above string length. It breaks, kicks us out of the for loop, and we return answer with just the one character in it. And now our next button is not working because we've done all the exercises in Warmup1. And we're going to go, let's see, I guess we're going to go do Warmup2 next time. If you're feeling a little discouraged, like if you have trouble with these, you go through something, and if you're thinking, wow, I suck at this, don't worry. Everyone starts there, and as Jake the dog from Adventure Time said, dude, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something. So don't be discouraged. Listen to Jake the dog. Everybody sucks at first, and then we're sort of good, and you keep working at it, and then you are good at it. And those are all steps that every virtuoso, every master, every expert has to progress through. And the only timeline you need to be worried about is your own. Keep working at it, and you'll get better. Certainly hope this helps. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time and get started on Warmup 2. Bye, guys.